All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. As you start to trickle in, we'll get started in a couple of moments, but just some housekeeping items. You are currently on mute. You won't be able to take yourself off mute, but if you have questions, you can use the blue chat window, the little blue bottom on the bottom right of your screen, to send across some questions to me, the moderator. And we'll go ahead and get started in just a couple of seconds, but really looking forward to this session today. All right, it seems like a couple of seconds has passed. So just introducing myself, my name is Ryan Busilla. I'm a manager here for the Workday Extend team. I'll be the moderator for today, but you're going to hear from two much more intelligently speaking people than I can today. You're going to hear from George Whitaker from the PGA, who has impeccable taste in office furniture. George, nice chair. We have the same chair. And you'll hear from Dan Pazahowski, manager of Extend Services, who has impeccable taste of facial hair. So I'm going to stop talking again. You are all muted. If you have questions, hit that blue button in the chat in the bottom right window. I'm going to go away, and Dan, I'm going to pass this off to you to kick us off here. So let's go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Ryan. Of course, it wouldn't be a Workday presentation without our safe harbor slide, as some of the statements we might make today might be forward-facing. But welcome to the session. I want to start by posing a few questions. So as customers move more of their business to Workday, custom solutions that aren't included in our core products present some challenges. So the question is, what do you do with those custom solutions? Do you refactor them to work with Workday? Do we continue to pay for third-party systems, licenses, and services? Do you continue to present a disconnected user experience to the end users? Or can you leverage Workday Extend to help start solving these challenges? Hi, I'm Dan Pazahowski, as Ryan mentioned. I'm manager of the Workday Extend Services team here at Workday. Today, we're going to talk to George Whitaker from PGA about his experience with Extend and some of the questions that I just posed. But first, a little bit about me. I've been with Workday for about 6.5 years, and I started in the integrations team. Then in 2018, I moved over to the Workday Extend team. And I actually helped to architect the purse management solution on PGA's Workday Extend deployment. I'm going to turn it over to George now to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about PGA.
Thanks, Dan. Hello. As Dan said, I'm George Whitaker, Director of Information Security and Cloud Architecture at the PGA of America. The PGA of America is a 105-year-old 501c6 nonprofit organization. We are co-organizers of the Ryder Cup, which hopefully you got to watch this last weekend, and Team USA posts a record 19 points. We are also the host of a few other majors in golf, including the PGA Championship, the KPMG Women's Championship, and the PGA Junior League Golf Championship. For clarity, we are not the PGA Tour that you see on TV every week. The PGA Tour was founded as part of the PGA from some touring players in 1967. We are, however, a mission-focused organization that is here to grow the game of golf and serve our PGA members. If you go to your local golf course or Topgolf, you'll likely run into one of our PGA members. About 5 years ago, at about the 100-year anniversary of the PGA, our CFO, Rona Amy, kicked off the start of a digital transformation. She elevated the technologies team role in the organization by hiring my boss, Kevin Scott, as the first senior director of technology. Kevin immediately started to shift the paradigm at the PGA with his customer-centric technology focus and passion for simple solutions. In any 100-year organization, there is bound to be a lot of bound to uncover and understand that the PGA was, wow, I'm way off on this one. There's a lot of tech debt, is my short way of saying this, and a lot of information that's buried in a 100-year organization. Many critical IT systems have been in operation for 15 to 30 years here at the PGA. So Kevin set out to expand the technology team and its capabilities. I've been with the PGA for a little over 4 years now, and it's been a whirlwind. We have built full stack member experiences on pga.org and golfer experiences on the new pga.com, migrated 3 data centers to AWS, migrated homegrown solutions to SaaS and service providers, flipped from Microsoft to Google, and a cornucopia of other projects. But our Workday initiative has been our most expansive yet. We have been live on Workday HCM since November 2020, and payroll since January of 2021, and financials since this May. We are actively working on a large Phase X deployment that brings the remaining 28,000 PGA members that is part of our grander workforce into Workday. Dan?
Thanks, George. So before we get into a bit of a discussion with George about the Extend deployment, I'm going to give you some background on what we actually deployed. So PGA had a custom solution for integrating and managing purses, which are essentially the payouts from tournaments and events. The old solution loaded data from third-party systems like Blue Golf and Golf Genius into their legacy finance system. It included a custom UI and a process to view, edit, and manage the data before submitting for payment. It was built as a custom add-on for their old finance system, which was being replaced by Workday Financials, as George mentioned. Now, since they were moving the Workday Financials, they had to find some path forward for purse management that didn't include the old system in the custom application. Leaving it as is wasn't an option. Licensing just wouldn't make sense. Options were really to build something on a completely new third-party stack or leverage Workday Extend. Nothing in the core Workday products could account for such a specific scenario. So, thus, we implemented the first Workday Extend application for PGA from the fall of 2020 to the spring of 2021, which was purse management. So, George, thank you for joining us today. I want to open the conversation with just a little bit of background on your journey to get to Workday Extend. Can you tell us a little bit about how PGA came to consider Workday Extend in the first place?
Yeah, it really started in our sales cycle. We knew immediately that we needed to build the purse app somewhere again, because we had a pretty clear directive to get off the existing platforms and as quickly as possible. So during the sales cycle, we asked, how would we support this? How would we build it? And at the time, the product, I think, was still in beta or early adopters program at that point. It wasn't GA yet. And one of the sales engineers took me aside and we talked about what you were all building with Extend and where it was at that point. So during that sales cycle, we kind of kept that in the back of our heads and said, this might be a possibility. Fortunately, we have a pretty strong engineering team, so we knew that we could always build something full stack again, but we wanted to see how this would develop over the course of our project.
Great. And I think when you first explored Workday Extend, there was a decision ultimately to not move forward with it initially for purse management. Can you tell us a little bit about what changed and what ultimately led to using Extend to build the first version of purse management?
Yeah, probably for clarity, it really wasn't our decision at the time. It was Workday's decision. We weren't doing a great job of communicating what we needed to build to them through the various channels that we had at the time. And it took a bit of coercing and persistence to get ultimately to the right people and have the right conversation to say whether or not this would be possible. So once we heard that, we were very excited about it.
Yeah, and I don't think you give yourself enough credit, right? You really did come to us with some additional thoughts on it to change our minds, right, and open the conversation to some interesting design patterns. One that ultimately worked, right?
Yeah.
Great. With that said, can you tell us a little bit about how leadership at PGA viewed the plan to use Workday Extend for purse management once that decision was on the books?
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate. Rona and Kevin were largely hands-off in this type of decision. So they knew we needed to build something custom. They knew our capabilities, and they knew that we were taking a bit of a gamble. So as we kind of went through this project, we were always monitoring how long it would take us to pivot and build something on our own. So they trusted us to develop it with Workday and see where things would go.
That's great. That trust is empowering at times, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of hinted at this. PGA has some internal development teams that you said have some capabilities. Can you talk a little bit about what their background is and how they're getting involved with Extend and if they're embracing it?
Yeah. So our development team, the folks have been here for more than, I'd say, 4 years or so, are traditionally Cold Fusion or Oracle engineers of some sort. So a lot of them have been going through a learning curve already to learn Node.js and React, which is our predominant tech stack today when we're doing a full stack build. And unfortunately, because of COVID, because of all the hot technology market right now, we're pretty spread thin. So we haven't been able to put as many engineers into the Extend space as we would like. We do have one right now who's building their own Extend app, which we're very excited about. So it's kind of, and this engineer was the perfect person for it. So we're excited to see how he's going to take ownership of his first app as well.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. And I've heard a little bit about that project as well. So very exciting indeed. So I want to shift a little bit and talk a little bit about the technology here and the purse management solution itself. Can you talk to us a little bit about and give perspective maybe on how purse management fits into the larger architectural picture at PGA and how it interacts with other systems?
Yeah. So I don't know if Dan, if you pull up the slide, it'll definitely help me and maybe others. But at the top of our technology solution here are two great partners, Blue Golf and Golf Genius. And if you've never come across these two platforms before, they run tournaments in the golf industry at your local golf shop to bigger events like some of our championships as well. So they're a key component here. They are the arbiter of who's winning, who's competing, all that information. So they push what we call purse winner and the purse information over to our API that you see there in that square box. And our API is built on top of AWS API Gateway. It's got a lot of other cool features to it, but then it will mediate between those systems and Workday and push that data into some custom objects that we have and ultimately become visible to what we call a purse manager or a purse specialist to review and confirm the results that came over, and then ultimately assign suppliers if necessary to the winners, and then get it approved for payment and meet our 3-day SLA. So from the point that they had approved, the next little box there is the Workday Studio integration. There's an integration that is looking for these approved purses, picks it up, sends it over to the supplier invoice system, and then gets it out to payment as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it truly is a wide picture when you look at the technologies involved here, right? It is much more than just Workday Extend and core Workday. You have, like you said, your partners in Blue Golf and Golf Genius, as well as AWS in the mix here as well, which I think was key to that reevaluation of the solution here. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It took all these pieces to really make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. In the first release or the release of the first version of Purse Management, I should say, what were some of the major milestones that you think we set that helped ensure success in the project?
The very first one was getting past what I call the gatekeepers, or just through the Workday methodology, the first part of it, which is validating the solution. That, like I said earlier, that took us some creativity and a number of conversations to get there. But really, once we got to Dan, in this case, who Dan and I worked on this together, everything kind of fell in line from there. The vision started to get more firm. The understanding obviously expanded for everybody, and right away we could tell this was going to work. From there, sticking with the Workday methodology, we went through the design document with Dan and then their engineer Jared in tandem, and kind of worked through that process. Them capturing more requirements from us, them understanding our needs, us talking to our stakeholders, and uncovering all the, I like to call them the dead bodies that exist in some of our systems, and why they're there and what's the purpose of it and all that stuff. But once the design doc was done, it felt very stable and sound. Like we knew we had a solution here that we could deliver. And then lastly, the very first prototype that Jared ended up building for us was just spot on, right? There wasn't anything missing. Most of the work that we did was polish. And when you're polishing that early in a process, it's going to be a successful project. That's
great. Great to hear. In a similar vein, I guess from your experience, what were the keys to success in getting live on Purse Management, specifically as your first Workday Extend application? Not trying to control everything was probably a big one. Trusting the process, trusting Dan, trusting Jared was a big piece of it. The other key of success, fortunately for us, we knew what we were building because we already had something like this before. The bigger challenge there was uncovering truth and knowledge. And you'll see maybe a little later in one of our questions that, there were some mishaps that we had to kind of correct for in our planning. So, and then Dan truly was a big part of the success. He was a great partner. He engaged the functional consultants that we were working with really well. So it saved a lot of, I think, cycles for the PGA team to kind of also engage the functional team and explain things to him. So he was a great connective tissue between all the different parties that were involved here. And then Jared delivered on everything. So that was phenomenal. You're going to make me blush here, George. No, a partnership goes both ways. So, I can't stress enough that your end of the partnership was just as key to the success, as you mentioned, uncovering that expertise within the PGA teams and really knowing what you needed out of this solution really helped drive a lot of that success as well. So yeah. We really appreciate the partnership that we had on this project. So tell us a little bit about how has the first version of Purse Management been received? You've been live for 5 months now or so, 4 or 5 months. So how has it been received by the end users and the different groups who get to interact with it? It's been received very well. We've had outright praise for it from an audience, from a demographic in our group that's usually not the easiest to get praise out of.
it's been quiet too, right? That's always a good sign. Like there haven't been a lot of issues being reported to us. Most of our issues are just data management around parts of the solution, around the custom org that everything's centered on, and other parts of the FDM that weren't quite in the right state at the time. So it's been highly praised, quiet, and everybody's excited about what we'll do next with it.
Well, I can tell you from my perspective, that's one of the most rewarding things that you can hear, right? When an app is live and the end users enjoy it, and truly indicates some great success. So I want to shift gears here a little bit and think with a mind towards the future and maybe looking at some of the lessons learned from this that we can take into future Extend engagements. I guess looking back, what do you think was the biggest challenge in moving the solution to Workday Extend now that all is said and done?
For us, our nature is to get our hands on things and test it and experiment with it, break it if we have to know its limitations. So Workday's appropriate methodology is to vet your solution and take you through a process before you have any way of getting exposure to it. So the biggest challenge was, especially as an engineer and architect, was like, what is this thing capable of? And that takes a bit of trust, because I think you're going to have to work, everybody's going to have to work with a partner on your first app anyways. But if you trust the process, trust the partner, and really communicate things, you can overcome that challenge if you're our type of company where you are builders and you want to touch and you want to see and play.
Yeah, that's a great perspective on it. I guess in a similar vein, is there anything that you learned from that first deployment that you might do differently now?
Looking back, I think even the early challenges, I personally should have slowed down and written down the requirements better for Workday to make that faster. That was a miss on our part. And for anybody who's doing their first project, if you take that time and discipline and rigor there, and if you have that time, it pays off, right? It just speeds the whole process up for everybody.
Yeah, and I think I could add to that from our perspective, right? One of the things that I took away from it that I definitely want to consider for future deployments is to trust some of your feedback as well, right? You guys brought an architecture back to us after we initially said no, that definitely worked, obviously, right? You're live on it. So yeah. That trust goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, looking a little bit more towards the future, there is a version 2 of Purse Management in the works, which we kind of alluded to. Do you want to just give us maybe a brief glimpse into what 2.0 captures and what might be changing in the second version?
Yeah, definitely. So Purse 2.0 aims to solve really 3 major things and take advantage of some new technology that Workday has deployed and Extend. So model level components and custom security and custom business processes have been very appealing to us. And this solution, as we roll out what we call Workday for our members, and bring those 29,000 members into Workday, there's about 10,000 of them that are part of this Purse winning group, and we need to make sure that we could serve them now in Workday terms as a contingent worker and no longer just as a supplier. So that was the first thing that we're aiming to solve. We also have a placeholder solution right now, which is if the person is winning but they don't exist in Workday yet, we put a placeholder supplier on them and it comes into the AP process and it holds and waits. Well, that's hands off for the people who are actually managing a tournament. So we want to bring that solution back up into the Purse tool and allow them to control when to release it when the supplier is set up back into AP instead of having a lot more back and forth. And the last thing was, and this was the design oversight that I made in the process, was it was critical to getting Purse 1.0 out, but we only allowed 1 purse per what we call an event. Well, it turns out more of our PGA sections and our own tournaments do multiple purses per event than we anticipated, than our data told us, and then our tribal knowledge told us. So we kind of had to ask for a little forgiveness on that one, and everybody was gracious. Thankfully, the app was working well otherwise. And we said, we're going to solve this in 2.0. So this will allow us to have multiple purses per single event, and in context, it may be, this weekend tournament, your local golf is actually going to have multiple sub events in it. So that's the big solution there.
Well, I'm really excited to see where it goes. It sounds like there's some very useful and interesting stuff happening in 2.0. Yeah. So glad to hear it. I guess just lastly here to wrap us up, do you have any advice for others when it comes to Workday Extend from a leadership perspective, just as we close our thoughts here?
Yeah, if you're a CFO or executive of some sort, you should be pushing your team to try out Extend in some way. If you're somebody who's executing on those type of projects, you want to figure out a way to get past Workday's gates as quickly as possible. I don't think they have a nice, easy way for you to get your own developer tenant, but figure it out, beg, borrow, steal, whatever it takes to get a dev tenant, to get into the developer portal and start learning what is possible there for you, because that's going to open the open the doors for more solutions for you. Really, one of the ways that we got ours done, I don't think I told you this, Dan, actually, but one of the ways we got ours done is part of our member solution. We said, we're going to do this real small, narrow thing. So then they sold it to us and we were able to get the SKU, and they said, that works, that's easy. And I said, let's do this purse thing instead. And so from that shift, right, we got a dev tenant, we were able to start interacting with it, seeing what was possible. And that helped raise my personal confidence that we were able to deliver on the solution before we really nailed everything down as well. So beg, borrow, and steal, get a dev tenant.
Well, George, I really appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us here today. With that, I know we wanted to leave a few minutes for Q&A. So Ryan, I'll hand it back over to you to help us out with the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you, George. I now know that person management has nothing to do with designer handbags and much more interesting than that. So if you do have questions, again, type them in the blue bottom chat window here. So I'm just going to go back and forth. We do have a few questions coming through. So as I read this, again, feel free to type this in. Let's see, this one is for George. So George, you mentioned your developer teams and working with Dan a lot. What is your developer team, and like how many people on your teams have that Extend skill set, if any?
Because of our Workday for Members project right now, we're really terribly spread thin. So we have one who is actively developing, and we've had a couple others kind of following the process along, so they have visibility. So the day when we say, let's go build something, they have more context. A few of the other engineers have taken, I think, the basic training, which if your team is full stack engineers, unfortunately, it's not terribly meaningful to you. The developer portal covers the same stuff. The advanced classes, I think, in more detail for a traditional full stack developer. But as we look at that member solution, there's more that we have planned. There's more in the pipeline already, and we're already kind of keeping a mental backlog, an actual backlog of, all right, here's an Extend solution, here's an Extend solution, to kind of put a little polish on the parts of Workday that we needed.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah, I assume a lot of the viewers and existing customers have different landscapes as well in terms of how many resources they have. I'm sure a lot of them are spread thin, and there's just a wide variety of how customers can approach this problem.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. We got another question in here. This one might be for Dan. Dan, how does the Workday release cycle affect the maintenance of these apps, if at all?
It's a great question. The idea and the hope is that it doesn't, right? I guess the best way to describe it is just like with integrations, you have versioned APIs. And so as Workday features get updated and APIs might uptake new functionality and changes in functionality with Workday releases, as long as you're still adhering to the older versions, you have backwards compatibility, you're not going to run into any issues there, right? And then it's up to you to kind of uptake those new features and those changes as you move forward. Of course, we always publish the service release notes, and there's a lot of material that goes out in community and advanced notifications for changes that might have an impact. And then I think the biggest thing overall is to consider the UI aspects of it, right? Part of building on the Extend platform is that you are going to get an experience that looks and feels like Workday. And that's one of the selling points of it, because over time, as Workday's user experience evolves and changes, your Extend apps will automatically uptake that since they're built on the platform, and that's what it's designed for.
Awesome. That's a great take. Sorry, George, did I run you over? Is there? Oh,
nope.
I'm just imagining things here. Sorry, I'm flipping through all the different channels looking for additional questions. Let's see one here. This one is from a customer who asks, for George, how did you go about exploring the initial use cases for Extend? Was it something, I believe you mentioned that this is already a problem you had, but was there any other inputs into how you were exploring your initial use cases? You mentioned you were trying to solve this small sliver Can you just walk us through that beginning process a little bit more?
Yeah, for Purse, we knew it was a custom solution. So we actually spent a decent amount of time with the functional team to see, can we just do this in Workday native, right? It's always our first question. Like, do we have to build anything or can we just use Workday? And because of we have a internal 3-day SLA on this process, and the field staff who's doing it doesn't have time to do things, you can use the bulk tools in Workday, but you lose a lot of the visibility in that process. And so the trade-offs of using like just the supplier invoice approvals wasn't worth it, right? We wanted to maintain the same highly efficient experience and keep everything nice and tight. So for that one, it was clear that we had to build something independent there or custom. And some of the membership solution, we're building things for demographics that we don't have full control over, right? Or audiences that we can't like highly train. So we work with universities across the United States. They'll be managing PJ students within Workday eventually. And so Nexon, who's our engineer, is building a solution for them to manage the internships that we run through the university programs. And so we said, this is an audience that we have to create a very narrow solution. The data sets we couldn't jam anywhere else. There wasn't a natural place for model level components, custom BP, and let's see what we can do with this thing. So a lot of it always starts with, can we do it in Workday, or does it exist already in one of our full stack solutions, or where it's a small change? If not, and we really need something custom, let's see if we can do it at Extend.
Love that response.
Yeah, and I think,
sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I just wanted to add on to that. I think just as pretty much every Workday Extend application ends up being a little bit different, right, and unique. I think every customer's journey is a little bit unique as well when they explore their use cases, right? You're starting to see this get out into the field, and spread a little bit more through our partners and the ecosystem from a consulting perspective. And so, George, to your point, I think you're seeing more and more functional consultants potentially propose Extend as a fit for some of these more complex solutions. Yeah. And then you have customers who are more proactive. Maybe they have a use case that they're not involved in an active deployment for and want to reach out maybe to their CSM and start a conversation that way and exploring Extend. So there's multiple ways to get involved with it.
I think that's a key point, Dan, that, in our solutions, right, as you and I were working together, and this is such a new product that the functional team from professional service didn't know about it and didn't understand its capabilities. So a lot of times, either Dan, if we were working together, or if I was working independently of Dan, it'd be like, hey, I'll name Dakota, he's great. We're building complex things around a golf retirement program that we have. And it's like, hey, Dakota, we could do this and this. He's like, really? He's like, that sounds amazing. Let's do that. So, if you are working, this is back to get your hands on it, right? If you're working with a functional and some sort of deployment or phase X, whatever, knowing what's possible can help those consultants think of new ideas, because it might just be a little app that does a lot of work for you.
That's a great tip, George. I think this will be our last question. We have a question from another customer who's asking, and this might be for Dan. Dan, is it possible for a functional person to implement Workday Extend without any developer background, like coding?
I think that would be very difficult, to be honest. Without the training and without any kind of background, I think that would be a bit challenging to come out of the blue and just tackle that.
Yeah. I think you would need to do a boot camp or something like a traditional development boot camp. Once you get past that and the basic Extend training, you might be able to, but if you can't get through a boot camp, that's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah. And that's not to say, to your point, George, right? You could, I absolutely think that kind of a consultant or resource could ramp up on it, but not something that you would just want to jump out of the gate with no background or training on and try to tackle alone.
Agreed.
Yeah. Appreciate the honesty, guys. And, we're just about at time. So thank you, George. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate your time today. Thank you to those who posed questions in the chat. We have more sessions later in the day. We have an Ask Me Anything actually right after this. If you're curious to hear more of my voice. Dan, George, appreciate your time. And everyone, have a great work day. Thank you for joining.